And the students we met that didn't make it into our story echoed a lot of what you just heard. We've talked about the issues. We can't help but talk about the candidates. Kevin, you have mentioned a little bit, the candidates infusing some excitement. We know the presidential candidates have done that, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But what about locally? You live here in Palm Beach County. Do you feel like they've had the pulse of the, say, 18 to 24-year-olds at our state level and local levels?
I think increasingly. Frankly, I'm more familiar with the number of the Democratic candidates, and I see them speaking to my students in a way which is very impressive. Charismatic young men and women who are reaching my students in thoughtful ways, using all the different media, the Facebooks, the text messaging, everything to get students out to mobilize them. And I've been speaking about students. When we talk about 18 to 24-year-olds voting, it's not just students who get to vote, and this is something that we all know. Right. And one of the things which is really unfortunate, especially about young people, is that the students who haven't, or non-high school graduates, kids who haven't gone to college, they're least likely to vote. And those students need to be reached, those potential voters need to be reached as well. And
do you think that the technology is reaching those 18 to 24-year-olds as well? Because you mentioned technology. I mean, everywhere now is log onto a website. That's pretty basic. But now you do have texting, you do have blogging, you have all these other aspects. How does it work to reach these people? When you go to a forum, Pam, are they talking like about that?
Oh, definitely, definitely. Well, first of all, you talk about a candidate forum where you go and listen to the candidates. You don't see a lot of youth at those candidate forums because they're doing the things that you're talking about. They're going to Facebook to learn about those candidates, MySpace, they're blogging, they're talking to the bloggers. But I do want to go back to something that you said. We're a nonpartisan organization, and I do want to say I'm finding it very interesting that it's not just one party of youth that is really out there voting. And when early voting started here in Palm Beach County, there was a group from FAU that camped out all night on Sunday night because they were so excited to be the first in line youth to vote down at the Southwest County Regional Library. And then there were people that were polled waiting to vote in early voting lines, and there were people that were saying, who are you going to vote for? Both presidential candidates were quoted, and both parties were represented for very different reasons, but sound reasons that they had for voting for the candidate of their choice. And it was definitely youth that had the opinions.
And so obviously they're getting educated. Adina, do you think that the education is, when you go into these classrooms, do they know something about what's going on, or are you kind of the first person to mention what's going on at the polls?
They truly are ahead of the curve. There's no question about it. These kids are really very savvy, and they're savvy for a lot of different reasons. They're savvy because their teachers are involved with them and help them along with the various resources that are available to them. They make them read the newspapers, watch television. When I go in, I give them websites. I give them the Supervisor of Elections website, the Legal Room of Voters website, and the Vote Smart website, which helps them as well. But these kids are very much ahead of the curve. They know the issues, and they're very much excited, and they want to come out and vote.
And they know where the candidates stand on the issues. That's what I had trouble saying where some of the candidates stand on certain issues. And again, we spent time both at FAU and at high school seniors, we should say. They knew a lot about different candidates and their stances. Kevin, is it really exciting? I know you had, obviously, the debate, so that had to fuel excitement. Yes. But I mean, even beyond that debate, because it was a while ago, it's kind of still fueling? Can you feel it gearing up? Because we're less than 2 weeks away now.
I will give you a frank answer. The answer is yes and no. The school year, the fact that it begins in August, we lose a lot of steam between the spring and the fall. And I teach at the Wilkes Honors College, which is a very small unit up in Jupiter. And we do lose some inertia. But the students are still very excited. I got an email this morning from one of my students who said, I voted yesterday for the first time with my friends, and it was so exciting. And I mean, that's a great thing to experience even vicariously.
Well, I want to mention, Pamela, I know you guys you're pretty much winding down the forums now, but you've done them almost year-round. We should put up the hotline number, because that'll still direct you to information on the amendments. We're talking about the candidates, obviously, but there are amendments on the ballot, and there's information on your on that phone number and the website, which is 411
.org.
Vote411.org.
Vote411.org.
We should say vote411.org. That great website, nonpartisan, which is what we're trying to say here. This is not a Democrat, Republican, independent issue. This is a across-the-board issue.
Right, right.
And when we're talking about young voting, we keep mentioning the 18 to 24-year-olds because that's how they divide up the segment of young voters. We met an interesting student. He's a sophomore at St. Andrew's School who says 18 is way too old to vote. Take a look.
Jumping from level to level.
High school sophomore Jeffrey Nadell is like other students his age. He crams for a chemistry test.
What was the constant again? Sorry.
6.6.
And hangs out with friends.
You have to see the design this guy did. It's amazing.
But
Really
Jeffrey
fun.
has a mission that makes him stand out. He feels teens should have the right to vote at a younger age than 18.
I was interested in just civil rights in general for a long time. And eventually I started thinking about, the voting age in general and kind of how youth are not treated as equals in society. And I came across the National Youth Rights Association. And I immediately identified myself with their ideals as well, especially with regard to the voting age.
The St. Andrew's School student shared his views with classmates, and they began educating themselves about the electoral process.
If someone's interested, we definitely need to tell them the facts and tell them what we think, but it's not about arguing.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 states that any person that has completed the 6th grade in a primarily English-speaking school has the knowledge, comprehension, and understanding to vote in any election, regardless of age. So if the U.S. government considers us old enough to vote, why aren't we allowed to?
People are going to say not mature, and obviously everyone needs to know how to address that. I mean, ultimately, there will be the most educated voters because of the integration of the voters' issues into the curriculum.
Based on our research, actually, the 16 to 17-year-old demographic is going to have an exponentially higher voter turnout than the 18 to 24 or the 21 to 25. There have been a good amount of countries that have lowered their voting age to 16, Austria, Bosnia, Jersey, things like that. And also some municipalities in Germany have done it. And in each of those, the voter turnout for the younger demographic has been exponentially higher. 37.5% higher in one case for the younger demographic.
They then created a national youth rights group and began talking to their teachers and parents.
I want to make a difference.
One of the most compelling reasons we see is taxation without representation. Because youth do pay over $10 billion a year in sales tax alone, and tons of income tax as well, but they're given no representation and have no voice in decisions, and we see that as a huge problem.
He feels that getting kids to the voting booth at 16 will start them on the right path to being an important part of the community around them.
It's good to start the habit young, is one thing. And then another thing is, because voting issues are so heavily integrated into the school curriculum, because youth take classes like civics and U.S. government and things of that nature, they have very strong opinions, and at this point in time, they don't have a way to express those and have a voice in government, and this will provide them with that.
The group is very serious, and in fact, will address local congressional delegations soon.
I see all the issues now that face our country, and know that all of this is going to affect us, my generation, for so much longer than it will current voters. I mean, we have a $9.6 trillion national debt. The environment's not in the best shape, the economy is certainly not in the best shape, and all these things are going to affect us for so long, but we don't have a voice. That's kind of the emotional thing that gets me into it.
He has already spoken to local community groups and is heading up a mock election at his school.
Our goal is youth empowerment. So we look at the ways by which we can accomplish that. Lowering the voting age is the primary one that we see because it will give youth a voice and give them a say in politics. But there are also other things, like we find it important to educate students about the rights they do have. We oppose discriminatory legislation that's discriminatory to youth and things of that nature. But yeah, education is also a very important part of our mission.
He and his classmates say they won't give up and will do whatever it takes to make sure their vote makes a difference.